Good afternoon, everyone. I am Sergeant Chris Amsler from the Media Relations Unit. Thank you for coming to our press conference this afternoon in reference to the officer-involved shooting that happened in the area of Alameda and Kentucky Avenue. I'm going to introduce our two speakers this afternoon. Our first one will be our Chief of Police, Nicholas Metz. His last name is spelled M-E-T-Z. Also speaking this afternoon is the commanding officer of our Major Investigations Section, Lieutenant Scott Torpen, spelled T-O-R-P-E-N. Chief Metz.
Thank you, Chris. Good afternoon. We appreciate you coming down here on such short notice. We wanted to take this opportunity to provide you some information of what happened early this morning. I want to remind you as we go through this that everything that we are sharing with you right now is still in that preliminary stage. The investigation is ongoing, so that means everything is still kind of fluid and it is always subject to change. If there is any information that we either missed today or something changes, we'll definitely make sure to loop back your way and ensure that you get that information. So what the plan is right now, I'm basically going to just kind of tee up what occurred this morning, and then I'm going to turn it over to Lieutenant Scott Torpen, who's going to provide a little bit more of the more detail as to what happened at both I-225 in Alameda and also what happened at Alameda and Kentucky. So early this morning at about 3:45 p.m., one of our officers was in the area of the off-ramp there at 225. He had stopped what he believed to be a stalled or stranded vehicle, and in the process of talking to the occupants of the vehicle, one of the occupants exited, got out, and frankly viciously attacked my officer while he was walking back to his car. The suspect in this case struck my officer with what we believe is some kind of a sharp object. This resulted in my officer receiving what could be described as a very serious head injury, and that required immediate medical attention. What I'm about to show you right now is a bit graphic, but I do definitely want to show you the picture of the officer's injury, and I feel it's really important to show that. This is the officer right here. This is what he was, the result of the strike to his head. Again, this was an unprovoked attack, and frankly, I feel very comfortable in saying that I believe that this was an attempt murder on my officer. At that point, the suspect, after incapacitating the officer, the suspect was able to get into our officer's patrol car and took off from the scene. We got into a pursuit with our patrol vehicle. The pursuit went up to speeds of about 65 miles an hour. That doesn't sound very fast, except think about this morning. The weather was very bad, lots of snow on the road, obviously putting a lot of folks in danger by that risky driving. Also, what's also important to know is that inside that patrol car, the officer had another firearm. So that presented more risks to the officers who were pursuing. Once the officers who were pursuing the vehicle were able to stop the vehicle, they ended up confronting the suspect, and during that confrontation, the officers ended up having to fire several rounds at the officer. Or excuse me, not at the officer, I apologize. Several rounds at the suspect. The suspect was hit and succumbed to his injuries at the scene. It should be noted that the fire department medics were immediately called. They did respond and declared him dead at the scene. I think at this point I will go ahead and turn it over to Lieutenant Scott Torpen.
Thank you, sir. Again, my name is Lieutenant Scott Torpen. I'm with the Major Crimes Unit. Just to reiterate what the chief said, this is a preliminary investigation. We're still interviewing people. We're still processing the scene, so we're at the early stages of this investigation. And like the chief said, we'll try to get you guys the information as soon as we can get it. So we're still working on the crime scene. This happened approximately 3:43 this morning. Like Chief Metz said, the officer called out with what he believed to be an accident or a citizen's assist. During his contact with the occupants of the vehicle, the officer was attacked from behind and struck with what we will define as a sharp object. At that time, the suspect was able to get into the patrol vehicle. Our officer, even though he was injured severely, was able to give us directions on which way the vehicle was traveling. He aired out the direction of travel. But we had numerous patrol vehicles responding to the area. We observed our patrol car, which still had the emergency lights on, going eastbound on Alameda. The officers, when they first saw it, estimated the speed to be 60, 65 miles an hour. And like Chief Metz said, at this time in the morning, we still had snow. Probably had 2 to 3 inches of snow on the highway, so 60, 65 miles an hour was pretty fast. It did take our responding officer quite a ways to catch up to the car. At about Buckley Road, they were able to get close enough to the car. At that time, because of the injuries, the severe injuries of the officers, it was determined that we were going to continue the pursuit, and it was authorized by one of our duty lieutenants. At about approximately Alameda in Kentucky, one of our patrol vehicles made contact with the stolen vehicle, which made it spin out. At that time, the suspect got out of the vehicle, and he was ordered numerous times to give up, to stop, to put his hands up. He did not comply with those orders, and at that time, our officer did fire at the suspect. The suspect did have something in his right hand. We're not sure exactly what it is right now. We're still working on the scene. I just want to let you know that we are working this with Denver Police Department. We do all of our officer-involved shootings with Denver now, and they do theirs with us. So we did have Denver command staff officer, a sergeant, and several Denver detectives assisting us with this investigation, and they will continue to assist us with the investigation throughout. That's all I have, unless you have any questions.
Lieutenant, do you know if his service weapon was in the car, or did he shotgun, or anything that you could indicate about the weapon that was in the officer's car still, and whether the suspect ever got his hands on that weapon?
Look up too.
Yeah, you don't really have
Oh,
to.
I'm sorry. Sorry. We do know that there was a shotgun in the vehicle. We don't believe that the suspect was able to get it out of the rack.
Do you know what fueled this attack, or do you think this car pulled over was some sort of bait at this point? I know it's really early to tell, but what are you thinking?
Honestly, we have no idea why this attack took place. There was no reason for it. Our officer simply stopped to help a citizen out, to render aid when he was attacked.
And how many others were in the car?
There was one other person in the car.
And that person has been detained?
Yes.
So did they exchange words, the officer and the guy in the car? Was there some sort of argument prior to him attacking the officer?
We don't have any indication that that happened. Like I said, we're still doing interviews.
Have you obviously looked for any criminal history on the deceased party as well as the other party? Is there anything there you can tell us?
We don't have the deceased party identified yet, and that will be released by the coroner's office once they get positive ID on the subject.
Did the suspect try to run over any officers?
We're like I said, we're still doing interviews. We're not sure yet. It's a possibility. We haven't been able to interview that officer yet because of his injuries.
And what about the other person in the vehicle?
He was taken into custody at the scene. He remained at the scene.
And just so that I have everything straight, so the car that we saw along I-225 in Alameda, I think it was that gray one, that's the car that the officer first saw and pulled over to help?
That's correct.
Did the first officer, the injured officer, was he able to fire any shots at the suspect?
He did.
He did. So there are two scenes: the scene where that officer was injured, and the scene where the suspect was eventually stopped.
Yes.
And there were gunshots fired at both locations.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
But the suspect wasn't injured at the first location.
We don't know. We're like I said, we're still doing the investigation.
And I think you insinuated this already, but the officers fired the first shots.
Yes.
And was it one or multiple officers injured?
One officer was injured.
Now, was he involved in the pursuit, or was he being treated by medical at the scene, or the first scene?
Other officers arrived on scene to assist him, and then they transported him to the hospital.
So he was not involved in the second scene?
That's correct.
The man you detained, what charges he faced?
Like I said, our investigation's still continuing. We're still looking at charges to see what his involvement is in this.
Does the vehicle-
Are you releasing the name of the suspect who was shot?
The one that was shot?
The one that was shot?
Well, that would be up to the coroner.
Can you tell us anything about the officer?
The Chief Metz will address some
Yeah.
information about the officers that were involved. Are there any other questions for the lieutenant?
Are you gonna release the name of the person you took into custody, the other person in the car?
I'm sorry, what?
Are you gonna release the name of the man you have in custody who was also at the first initial scene?
We will eventually, yes.
Is the officer who was injured, did he have surgery that looks like a severe head injury? Was there an operation or surgery involved in that?
No surgery to my knowledge. I believe it's just stitches.
And is that officer's name out yet?
No.
Will you be releasing it?
Eventually, yes.
Anything more today?
No.
One other question, the suspect in all of this, I know he viciously attacked the officers from behind some type of sharp object. Did he fire any shots at all that you guys are aware of?
Not that we're aware of.
You're talking about who?
The suspect.
The suspect. Since deceased.
I don't know if this is a better question for either of you, but it just sounds like a very alarming ordeal that doesn't happen every day. So I just wanted to talk about that a little more and see if this is something that's frightening to you in the department.
Actually,
gonna let-
we'll have the chief address that.
Yeah.
He has a few more details that he also wants to get out to you today.
So in regards to your question, I mean, again, this was an unprovoked attack. As Lieutenant Torpin said, this was an officer who stopped to aid somebody, and to be viciously attacked like that during the middle of what would be a Good Samaritan act, it's pretty alarming. I think our officers did an incredible job in responding to something that was pretty chaotic and pretty confusing. There were some questions about the officers. I'm not going to be identifying the officers by name at this time, but let me at least give you some basic information. The officer who was injured has been with the Aurora Police Department for 3 years. He has no prior officer-involved shootings. Another officer who was involved in the incident at Alameda and Kentucky has been a police officer with the Aurora Police Department for 3 years and has no prior officer-involved shooting. The sergeant who was also engaged in the confrontation at Alameda in Kentucky has 13 years on the department and does have one prior officer-involved shooting that occurred about, I think, in 2006. All 3 officers will be placed on administrative reassignment as per department policy. The investigation will continue, as Lieutenant Torpin said, and again, the Denver Police Department will be assisting in that. And we will also be doing a subsequent internal investigation as we move forward.
The
Yes,
beginning
ma'am.
stuff that you just said, can you say it looking up so we can get you?
You guys are all down here. Okay.
Sorry.
Again, this is, when you see what's happened around the country, we just saw what happened in Colorado Springs. Our officers every single day are responding to very hazardous kinds of situations, oftentimes responding to situations where deadly force probably would be justified, but because of their training and the tools and so forth that they have been able to successfully resolve those kind of situations. This one's a bit different, as I said before. Here's an officer who was conducting a Good Samaritan act, trying to aid somebody during during a snowstorm, and gets attacked from behind with a very, very sharp object. You've seen the wound that was left there. And again, I have absolutely no qualms in believing that this suspect meant to kill our officer. I think our officer, the one who got injured, did an incredible job of being able to get information out about what had happened despite his injuries. Had he not been able to put the direction of travel out and what had happened, I'm not sure we would have caught the suspect as quickly as we did.
Are they in administrative leave or reassignment? Just double check.
It'll be a combination of both. We typically will have officers stay at home for a few days until let them gather themselves, but then we'll find an administrative reassignment to place them until portions of the investigation are completed.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.